Alright, another draft physics presentation. Yay. Um, yeah, at least I say so. So let's, recap a little bit. So again, I am requesting conversation with anyone who wishes to defend conventional physics, the standard model, the idea of bent geometry as being a cause that's in any way reasonable, that somehow this ether, even if you made it into an ether, somehow accounts for the creation of the energy, which they still don't account for. Why does the atoms move? Why? If for magnetism, likewise, virtual photons defend somebody who wishes to defend the notion that the force, which they know from Maxwell's equations is radial, that is, it radiates straight lines. So if there's a positive and negative charge, and you want to find out what happens to this guy here, what you do is just figure out how long the lines are, and it'll tell you, okay, how strong the charge is. The further away the charge is, the less strong it'll be, and it'll be completely decided by straight line geometry, completely consistent with the theory I'm proposing, completely inconsistent with some notion of a energy source that comes from nowhere. So anyway, so I am seeking that individual who has the courage to attempt to reasonably answer my questions, and such. And I, of course, will answer theirs. Oh, look at this long comment. Excellent. It'll be garbage. Let's see, is there anything else to report? No, that's it. So again, it's kind of evidence of fear, because we see plenty of physicists who were willing to take on the low rotten fruit of flat earthers, right? They're all desperate to show us how smart they are by defeating the flat earthers. How come they're the only people they're willing to defeat? To demonstrate their powers. Anyway, you slander anyone who provides you the slit equation. We've been over this. It's, first off, you want to call it the slit equation, that's okay. It's an angle equation, sine theta. It's not a wave equation. And you haven't provided, as I'll point out again, the double slit creates some sort of different geometry. What we're after here isn't somebody who can do a derivation of two different formulas, okay, to make two different patterns and pretend he has a theory of why there's two patterns. Okay, anybody can do that. Anybody can create two patterns by just having, especially when the patterns are proportional to each other. So the single slit envelope pattern is proportional to the double slit pattern, and it's proportional by the same variables, the frequency of the light and the width of the slit. And all you're really doing is saying this pattern, the envelope, is 30% smaller or different than the other pattern. And so that's just a gimmick. So yes, I'll call that a gimmick. This is just a gimmick. There's no explanation. So they can draw us a really good picture of two-slit wave interference. Why can't you draw me a picture of what's causing the envelope? Show me the mechanism. Show me why in water waves there aren't two patterns and why in light there are two patterns. Because the light is supposed to be behaving just like, seems like, just like water waves. Well, if it's behaving just like water waves, that is, it's transverse longitudinal waves, blah, 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 then why doesn't it have the same geometry? Show me the geometry responsible. Doppler shift math. So again, more bullshit that, again, Doppler shift is clearly geometry. Just measuring the length, the stretching of a frequency. So show me how Doppler shift is different in sound waves and in light waves. That is, according to Professor Lewin, based on no evidence I could find anywhere, and I requested that he provide the evidence of a sound experiment where they demonstrate that moving the source creates a different Doppler shift than if you move the receiver. There's no evidence of that. So he's saying sound is different than light. Is there any evidence that it's different? Or do they have a formula that says it's different, but there's no evidence of the difference? So you're just proving my point. By creating mathematics that states there's a difference, and you have no mechanism for the difference, and there's no evidence of the difference, that's even lamer. Michelson-Morley math. So again, what's the math? What math do you have, okay, besides this length time difference? And again, it's not consistent with Einstein. So your own theory, Einstein says the light doesn't bend into the future. So this idiotic argument that the photon goes forward when something's moving, when the photon is shot perpendicular, it doesn't go perpendicular, it goes in some forward direction. So that's their argument. So they're saying basically if you're reflecting light off a car, for example, and you make the car go fast enough, the light won't reflect perpendicular off the car anymore. It'll reflect forward. Now, Einstein didn't think so, because that's the entire reason, as I understand it, he had to double the gravitational effect on photons. So Einstein proposed that gravity affects photons twice as much, right, a force bit, twice as much as any material bit. So it twice as much as an electron, twice as much as protons, twice as much as all the material things that have mass, and somehow photons are twice as affected by gravity by some kind of magic. No reasoning, no mechanism, just because Einstein had to make it equal to a concept that Einstein obviously didn't believe photons travel forward. If he did, then he wouldn't have had to make those changes. So what's your reasoning again? How does this make sense? And again, he says he provided something. Keep posting the links so I can keep going to the links and just showing how you've given me nothing. You'll show me a derivation of an equation that's never applied to a real world circumstance, and the derivation isn't used by any professor teaching at any college I can find. So what the hell are you talking about? You have the solution that isn't a solution, that nobody knows about it. Richard Feynman doesn't know about it. Show me somebody real, okay, saying that it exists, that it's the right answer, etc. Call them liars. No, I call you a liar. That's right. I call you a preposterous exaggerator at best, and at worst you're a liar. Yes, you're a malicious faker. Okay, to say that you've proven something when you haven't, or that you have evidence, you've shown me evidence, again, of the reasoning. How is the Huygens equation different in two-slit light, that it creates two patterns? Show me. Where does the second pattern come from? What causes it? What change in the overlapping waves happens to give you two patterns? Show me that, and then tell me you have a complete model, that you have a correct model. And then say it's rigged math. Well, it's clearly rigged if all you do is add a formula after the fact to change what the first formula produces, because it's not accurate and insufficient. And you just add another set of mathematical crap to fix it. And I would argue that's all Einstein's field equations are. They're intensely and insanely complicated because what they're basically doing is creating, okay, the error created by Mercury's processing orbit. All right, math, providing only gibberish in return. Well, it's not gibberish first. I'm pointing out that Einstein didn't believe photons go into the future. I'm pointing out that it's not gibberish to point out how there's no physical evidence that photons are twice as affected by gravity. So you're lying. Okay, I mean, I'm providing counter arguments that you haven't provided any evidence. You won't even explain to me, you won't show me a diagram of where the interference happens in the Michelson-Morley experiment. As I'm pointing out, you can create the pattern by just making a piece of glass dirty. A dirty piece of glass creates the exact ringed pattern. So I've certainly provided more than gibberish. I've provided videotape evidence. When shown slit measurements that are gradual, so he says where? I haven't been shown any of that. So that's a lie. Where did you show me the double slit pattern projected on a screen that created a pattern that looked like electrons with photons? Where did you show me that? Again, he shows me an equation, okay, and he shows me a chart, okay, that was obviously manipulated, in the sense it wasn't the chart of all the data. And what else was wrong with it? And of course it also was pretty crappy data. I mean, the sense of the amount of data points were so few that you can't really draw a conclusion. Let's see. Yes, when shown slit measurements that are gradual. So again, go ahead, post that link again. Let's go over that paper. I think it was a high school paper, actually. You know, it's just crap. All right. So it's not on Veritasium's channel, right? When he did the experiment, he got half his output was noise. Half. Half the photons didn't do what they were supposed to be doing, which was creating the pattern. Half the photons were erroneous photons. Half of them. You ignore the fact that they are gradual by invoking some other distraction. I'm just saying that I've done the experiment, I've seen the patterns. I have clearly pointed out to you. So again, this is another thing, he never answers my question. So I've pointed out that depending on how big your laser beam is, so if you use a very compact beam, small beam, and you shoot it through the slits, you actually get circles, not bars of light, indicating clearly that what's getting transmitted is an image of whatever goes through the slit. Not consistent with wave interference at all. See, any kind of destructive interference would be destroying photons essentially and would ruin the pattern, the image. So there's no explanation for why images are projected as bars. So in the original Young experiment, do you deny that the original Young experiment round circles of light were produced as the pattern with non-monochromatic light to boot? Okay, sunlight was used. Do you not deny that was the fact? And do you not deny that there were circles of light? Do you deny it? You ignore the fact that they are gradual by invoking some other distraction. So again, I'm not ignoring it. And again, I'm the one pointing out that when Professor Lewin does the variable slit experiment, a single slit, you can clearly see what happens, right? The patterns look very bar-like, and then as you make them bigger and bigger, the tops get round and the bottoms get round, indicating that they were round when they were bars, and only when you stretch it out do you actually see the curvature. So the bigger you make the image, so to speak, you're stretching it this way. You're not making it bigger this way, you're making it bigger this way. And as you stretch the image, you see the actual curvature, indicating that, yes, even in the regular, even with a big laser beam, the slits are usually always bigger. See, they might not be bigger than the width of the slits, but the laser beam is always smaller than the height of the slits. And what you're actually seeing, again, is the image of the curvature of the laser beam. Do you deny that is the logical explanation? Okay. Ignore the fact that they are gradual by invoking some other distraction. So again, he thinks that's a distraction. The fact that it may just be images being projected by the slit, which is clearly demonstrated by the multi-slit. So if I take more than 5 or 6 slits and do the experiment, I will end up producing images in a location. And that's a clear fact. Okay, the diffraction gradients are used to do that very thing, to project images, to create little stars in a field, to create very precise geometric patterns, because it's creating an image. It's duplicating the image. Now, will you concede that if that's what's taking place, if images of the slit surface, images of the surface are being projected, that kind of blows Huygens out of the water? Will you concede that if that's the fact? I mean, see, you don't. There's no give and take here. You just try to tear things down, but you're not defending. Okay, what I have pointed out has cracks in it and is not quite right. You're not really making any defense for that, because you're not answering my questions. Why would anyone sensible ever have a conversation with such a disingenuous pause, whatever that is? And so I'm disingenuous how? I mean, frankly, this is just ludicrous statement. In what way am I deceptive or dishonest or any of these things? How do you account for that insane statement? You think you've proven to me that photons are bent twice as much by gravity. You think you've proven to me how the interferometer works by pointing out where the interference happens and how the pattern's created. When we know optics will create the pattern, okay, so it's not happening as it moves from the lens to the target. Clearly, optically, it's happening in the lens. I mean, you are the people that are disingenuous and dishonest, because you're not answering the points I'm raising. You're the one with this distractions, saying, well, there's a derived equation. We derived one. We never solved it. We never actually used it on an actual experiment to prove that it works. We didn't do any of that. We didn't actually show you a picture of the product. All right, I explained in the very post you read why you have a meaningless mush God theory. So again, there's no God theory here. You didn't explain anything. So where was the explanation? You obviously didn't make it in English. Where's the dogma? Where's the virtual photon? Again, if I said virtual something, well, the virtual thing did it. It's a virtual source of energy. If I had that in my theory, you'd say that, oh, it's broken right from the start. You can't do that. If I came up with some crap where I said the geometry tells the thing where to go, you'd say you can't do that. That's bullshit. That's just the God theory. That's the same thing. It's just saying the invisible man pushes it. That's just crap. You're such hypocrites. Alright, you can explain anything if you just say your bits arrange themselves. I never said they arranged themselves. So again, this is just such a lie. What I said is the universe has a billions and trillions and zillions of this force stuff. I've said it's a deterministic universe. They're all on a course. And what I've said is you can't kill a force bit. You can't fucking kill it. Alright? It's indestructible. The very same thing Einstein says. You can't create or destroy energy. Now, even though they're doing that now, where they're making their little positrons and proton pairs are just poofing out of the vacuum, but originally you couldn't do any of that by Einstein's theory. You couldn't make energy, and you couldn't destroy energy. And they still don't believe you can, because they really don't believe annihilation is annihilation and the creation is creation. So it is such a lie. See, again, you're the ones with the deceptive language. Annihilations aren't real annihilations. Susskind will say that. So what the fuck? Who? I mean, how can you be such a fucking hypocrite? I mean, it's just so insane that you could make this accusations where I said something arranges itself, when all I've said is there's a bunch of energy that's randomized. Okay, that is, there's so much of it, and in a sense, the universe, like the cosmic, I compared it to the cosmic background radiation, did I not? And even though it has subtle little tiny temperature differences from different directions, it is essentially equal from all points of view. The same amount of it's coming at you from everywhere, no matter where you are in the universe. And that's the fact. That's what we physically see. Oh man, you're such a liar. Say your bits arrange themselves any way you want. So again, I don't arrange them. I told you what they do, which is simple. They move the speed of light in a straight line from point A to B, theoretically a B point, as long as they don't hit an electron. If they hit an electron, that's point B. Okay, they change their direction. They can change their direction. Clearly, it depends on the state of the electron. That's why there's transparent materials, because if the electrons are rigidly and consistently arranged, then the photon is consistently transmitted. Now, I haven't said anything auto arranges anywhere. I haven't created any magical movement. I've pointed to Feynman diagrams. Certain things go in, certain things are inevitable to come out by strict rules. Where have I said there's no strict rules? God, you're such a liar. See, I mean, you'll see this as a pathetic lie that I have done what you have accused me of. Where? Please, quote the video where I said anything like they arrange themselves. Show me where that is, because I'm arguing against self-arrangement. Just am I arguing against protons and electrons all by themselves saying, I have to travel towards the sun. And I'm certainly arguing that photons can't do it. God, you're such a liar. Any way you want, without explaining why those arrangements are inevitable. Well, I certainly have explained it. Okay, there's simple rules. Why they reflect and why, in a sense, being absorbed. A reflection is an absorption. And that the only thing I've told you is just the way it is, because I can't give you every single subtle mechanism, is that when an opposite force bit hits an opposite charge bit, an electron or proton, it leaves perpendicularly in one of the perpendicular dimensions by rules that exist. And all of that is perfectly consistent with what Maxwell says happens. And all of it you don't even have any explanation for. So at least I'm providing some explanation. You're providing none. So you don't have something solid to compete with what I'm saying. You have nothing as a theory on that fact. Nothing. You have no explanation at all for why Maxwell's rules exist. I'm explaining why Maxwell's rules exist. Oh, man, you're just such a liar. Given your starting point, apparently you just don't get it. No, apparently you are a pathetic liar, a disgusting liar, to imply that you're the one with no explanation for why the force comes out perpendicularly. I'm the one with some explanation. You're such a pathetic liar. All right. It was explained 1 billion times, not even close. So there's no explanations here. No links to any explanations. If he had explanations, he would have shoved them in here, right? What's the big deal? Keep posting the link. I'll keep going to the pages. I'll keep pointing out how you think this crap answers my question, because it doesn't. All right. Explain 1 billion times why you can't have internal bits push a school of fish. So now he's mixing metaphors and analogies. All right. Something I don't do to your physics. So again, you have to cheat. Okay. You can't just fairly play the game. You have to cheat. Push a school of fish upstream without violating conservation of momentum. So we're talking about electrons and protons. They clearly lose their momentum. Clearly it happens. As pointed out by the experiment that weighs the electron, right? You put electrons in a magnetic field and you capture them in a circle. All right, so they just keep going in a circle. Well, as soon as you turn the electricity off, the circle stops, indicating the electrons aren't trapped. Okay, they're really not, in a sense that the electrons that are in the trap die. They die quickly. They have no sustainability in their velocity. What's your explanation for why the electrons lose all their velocity? Do you have an explanation? No, you don't. So I haven't violated any conservation laws. It's just a fucking lie. He has no reference or no explanation for and how in any way I violate a conservation law when I'm explicitly talking about conserving conservation. And I could post you to Hofladay's video. I finally convinced Hofladay that there's no conservation violation. Alright, so, this is just a real lie, considering that Hofladay, a pretty hard case on the subject, has accepted that no, there's no violation of conservation. That the momentum I'm arguing, it always exists, either as free energy or as trapped energy. It's never not energy. Every collision in your model is kinetic, so the total momentum in those collisions doesn't just increase out of nowhere. So again, the collision is an absorption, as I've pointed out 5 million times. The collision is a collection, that is, it's a trapping of the momentum. So if I trap something, I haven't destroyed it. There hasn't been a collision, quote unquote, so to speak. And every bit of energy going one way has been compensated by an opposite amount of energy in the opposite way. So if you think about a little square, right? There's as much going this way as there is going this way, as there is going this way, as there is going that way. So it completely adds up to a zero, except for the fact that the initial energy going in, okay, isn't really compensated by this one going this way because it still exists. You can't kill the initial momentum. It's still in there. So again, this is all stuff I've explained. So just liar. Just a pathetic fucking liar. Why don't you put your real name on these lies, you little petty liar? Collisions doesn't just increase out of nowhere. Alright, so let's see, kinetics. So the total momentum in those collisions doesn't just increase out of nowhere. So again, the total momentum I've never argued is increasing, so that's more horseshit. Totally discriminating your drag argument? Decimating. So again, how so? So again, this is just such a lie. You haven't decimated any argument made on drag, especially if you consider that a perpendicular reflection is half 180 degrees. Right? So, half as much energy in one interaction as you get out of the other interaction, in the sense that the reflection is 180 degrees. And you're only losing, 90 degrees at the corner. So if I make a triangle and I have energy going up to something and it reflects 180 degrees back from the top part, but only reflects 90 degrees at the single deflector, every interaction, if you total it up, there's 180 degrees against the electrons, and there's only 9 degrees of momentum change at the proton. And so if you total it up, there's more momentum going one way, 180 degrees of change against the electrons, and there's only 90 degrees of change against the proton. So just more lies. Right, where was I? Okay, so, and so on. Oh, yeah, there's no and so on. And this is really kind of important stuff, see, because they're proposing ethers to exist, and forces to exist, and fields to exist, fields that they don't account for. So they don't give you any description of any mechanism, and so they evade having to answer drag issues. They don't have an explanation for why electrons can't maintain their velocity and why protons can't. Why aren't they acting like more complex matters? Why is it that electrons and protons, okay, except in plasmas, that is associated with atoms, they can't get here? You can't get bombarded by a stream of electrons from the sun or a stream of protons from the sun. Why can't you? Why can't those particles be ejected near the speed of light? Why don't we see electrons coming at us at near the speed of light? Why isn't that happening? Why aren't they traveling through space like that? Show me an electron doing that for anything more than this kind of distance. Okay, show it. Because it doesn't exist. And you don't have any explanation for it. Alright, so on. When confronted about the heat problem, there's no heat problem because that's just insane in a kinetic system that nothing breaks into pieces and all the energy is in quanta. How can you have a heat problem exactly? Yeah, there's no heat problem. You give a non sequitur about how heat doesn't exist at the elemental level. Yeah, it doesn't. Heat, the stuff that actually is heat, that is moving atoms, and atoms are being moved because they're absorbing force, extra force is hitting them, and they move in that direction, or force is taken away, and they move in that direction. But we know heat is usually because more little bits are bouncing around. So there's more interaction. So this is just a ping pong paddle argument again. Heat happens when you move things closer together, and especially when you move two electrons, say, closer together. There's things bouncing back and forth between the electrons. And as you move your hands closer together, there's more interactions per second. Same number of little things, ping pong balls. More interactions. And if the ping pong balls never go slower, never lose momentum in an interaction, then how the fuck isn't this more energy, more heat? That's what heat is. Heat is pressure. Pressure and heat are the same thing. And so where's the non sequitur? It's a perfectly rational explanation of what heat is and how you create it. Now, obviously, the stuff that's involved in making heat isn't making more heat. Okay, the stuff that's moving the ping pong balls aren't getting hot. Photons don't get hot. Protons, electrons don't get hot. They just get hit more. They don't, there's no heat on a level lower than them. They express heat by moving more. When protons and electrons are moved more, because more interactions are happening, they're changing directions more, that's heat. There isn't any heat on a lower level than that. Asshole. Alright, but how heat doesn't exist at the elemental level. It doesn't exist beneath the elemental level. Idiot. Can't wait to see you go ahead and explain that yet again. You're just so preposterous. So again, the argument's kind of obvious. Heat is a symptom. It's not a thing. Heat isn't a physical thing. It's a byproduct of a system functioning. And the system functioning is functions based on force or energy, as I've pointed out. So how is there an inconsistency here? More energy in a smaller space means heat. You can't avoid it. Alright, go ahead and explain that yet again. Maybe someone should use that against global warming. Well, I'm just saying global warming understands at least what heat is, okay, which is exposure to radiation and different things. They understand that cause it, which you apparently don't understand. You can say, I don't see any physics argument 10 times. Well, I mean, you have to have a physical explanation. You have a model of the universe and how it works. I'm saying your model is full of gremlins and invisible men. So you don't have to account for it. There's nothing for you to even draw. You can't even make anything physical because your system is based on a bunch of imaginary invisible things that don't exist, like dark matter, for example, fake things. But you could at least draw the effects of dark matter because it has a physical effect. You're saying it's creating a force. A force effect anyway. A force effect. A, virtual force effect or something. Yeah. But you don't have anything for the regular mechanics. You have nothing. You can say, I don't see any physical argument 10 times, 100 times, and even 1,000 times. It doesn't make it true. It certainly makes it true that you have no physical explanation model. You can't draw me a picture of your virtual photons. You can't show me where they came from because you have the wrong idea about where force comes from in the universe. You think vacuums create it. You think it poofs into existence. And it just happens to poof in the way you want it to, and that it converges into suns by some magical force. Again, your theory is the incomplete one, the one that doesn't make any sense. Leonard Susskind, one of the most respected physics teachers in Earth's history, describes it as basically a flow of water, a drain. That's how it's described, and that's his preference, is a drain. Not a waterfall, pushing water, but a drain, draining water. So fuck you. Your own teachers, this is how they teach the subject, shithead. It was already explained to you, again, more horseshit, that in the Hubble telescope, the paint and metal would expand from the heat absorption. So again, I already explained how that problem is easily mitigated by merely keeping the door open. So instead of having the door flip all the way, you just leave it this high. And then you move into the sun from this angle. And then you won't have any of those problems because the angle of reflection of the light will be severe enough, okay, that your shield will block any light from getting into the aperture of the telescope. So if the hole for the telescope is here, the lid is here, and you move into the sun this way, this lid will shadow the entire aperture. So no light can get inside, bounce back and forth, and expand the metal and do all that horse shit. The only thing that'll get hot is the fucking lid to the fucking telescope, and it won't matter. So this is just a lie, more bullshit. And as I pointed out, we all know that NASA engineers can be very clever. Again, Apollo 13 just showed miraculous cleverness. Where they modeled their spaceship, and NASA knows how to model their spaceships because they made the damn thing. So they have little models, and they can figure all this stuff out on the ground and then apply it to space. And that works really well. And again, they have a real good model of their telescope, and I'm sure if they wanted to do it, they could do it. So this is all just a cop-out. And as I pointed out, this doesn't require an extraordinarily powerful telescope. You don't need a 4 meter, or whatever it is. I guess it's a 2 meter, 3 meter lens in the Hubble, something like that. Can't remember how big it is. I don't think it could be that big. It has to be just over 1.5 meters or something. Well, anyway, doesn't matter. You need a 12-inch one on Earth, and arguably you don't even need that when you're on the space shuttle or something, because you got no atmosphere getting in your way. So again, as I pointed out, we got millions of satellites, not millions, but lots of satellites with very good cameras on them, very good telescopes on them, telescopic lenses. We got really good, I'm sure they have that on the space shuttle, a pretty good telescope. So this is just more horse shit. The experiment can be done from space. They just haven't done it. And if they did do it, they found, I can't see it. We can't find the effect. We can't photograph it for you because it didn't happen. We can't take a videotape of the background sun moving and then moving backward again. We can't give you the videotape because when we did the experiment, we couldn't see it happen. There's no explanation for this because the effect should be quite dramatic and easy to capture. The sun should actually do that. It should actually move forward, go backwards, and then move forward again and disappear. So those things should all be in there if this lensing crap were the truth. And so again, this is a bullshit explanation to say we don't have the technology. Bullshit explanation. For some reason, they don't have the will to do the experiment. Where's the videotape of it happening? Because it should fucking exist. And that's just a fact. It should exist. I mean, it's just such a lie, to sit there and again to keep pointing out that this Hubble argument. Okay, I'll grant you the Hubble argument. They're too paranoid to do anything with their precious Hubble telescope. Well, they're decommissioning the thing anyway. So it's time to take a few chances with it, right? So go for it, I would argue. But regardless, again, the 100th anniversary of Einstein's theory, the 100th anniversary of the Eddington experiment, the 100th anniversary of the New York Times headline, and none of that mattered to any of these people. It was totally irrelevant. Let's not bother redoing an experiment that's never been successfully duplicated. You're telling me that's okay. That makes sense to you. Well, I'm sorry. It'll never make sense to me as being anything other than evasion of something they don't want to get into because the fact is they're not going to be able to get the results they should be. The theory says one thing should be quite obvious, and it's not going to be there. And they don't want to print the headline, Einstein may be wrong. They're scared to death of that headline. All right, so Mark Gray says, Gemini, it is true Hubble wasn't designed to watch the sun. Again, you're not watching the sun. All you're doing is looking at the space 30 degrees away from the sun, right? Okay, because you should be able to see lensing at least 20 degrees away from the sun because of this effect of gravity by Einstein's theory affecting photons twice as much. So because of Einstein's rig of the photon's ability to be moved by gravity, you have a huge amount of range you can move away from the sun and still should be able to detect the effect. And so, and this has been pointed out by the Dowdy guy, who was an ex-NASA engineer, who pointed out that he's done all these laser experiments and all this shit, and they've never seen anything scatter or deflect or do anything outside the sun's corona. So any further than maybe 5 degrees, no effect. Okay, he's a NASA engineer. I guess this guy, Gemini, would call him a liar. What are you going to do? Okay, if this Hubble wasn't designed to watch the sun. So again, you don't watch the sun. You just move the telescope to the black area in front of the sun or behind the sun. Now, obviously, doing it behind the sun would be a lot safer because the sun can't jump in front of your telescope. But NASA should be able to handle it either way. They could be 20 degrees below the sun or 20 degrees above the sun. Then they don't even have to worry about, oh, we forgot to move with the sun. But why didn't do anybody the experiment again? But why didn't do anybody the experiment again? Such a misarrangement of words. You don't see that too often where the words are actually misarranged. But why didn't anybody do the experiment again? Were the results only due to expanding paint? So I don't know exactly what that is a reference to. There certainly are lots of problems with the Eddington method. Okay, the bad weather, the fact that he's using a mirror to reflect the light into the telescope in the first place, which sort of degrades your telescope one more unnecessary amount. But anyway, So Gemini responds, there have been measurements done by VLBI telescopes on the ground. So these aren't telescopes, these are radio telescope dishes, and this whole bullshit of we're going to take the data from a bunch of different things and say we've measured something accurately. All right, completely, tons of math, tons of assumptions built into their manipulation of the data. Nothing like a picture, nothing like the simple videotape you should be able to take. I mean, this is how bad this is, right? I mean, it's just a fact that if you take a decent telescope, like a 6-inch lens from the space shuttle, you focus it on the area, right outside the sun, as close as you can get without the corona being a problem. So a little bit outside the corona, you should be able to focus it on a sun, and you should be able to watch the sun not move in the sky regular to your movement. It should do something wacky. And it's just a fact, and they should have a videotape of it doing something wacky. All right. On the ground, which are very precise and were analyzed many times by us, by the LIGO people who invented the notion of converting solar mass into bent space, something Einstein never theorized about, something they entirely invented. The scientists working on it invented this new theory that this thing happens for the purpose of making it possible for them to hear gravitational waves. And we're supposed to believe that's credible evidence. That's so good that any reasonable person should just say, yes, that's what they did. Same crap. And they looked at stars that are as far away as 30 degrees from the sun. So, yes, so they looked at it, not looking at it. So, again, more lying about exactly what they're doing. They didn't take a picture of anything. They didn't photograph anything. This is all synthetic data manipulation. All right, this is CGI movie kind of bullshit. So the effects observed have nothing to do with refraction by the sun's atmosphere or corona. Yeah, I'd say the effects have to do with the theory of your data manipulation. Why don't you use a real telescope? If you say the lensing exists, why don't you use a real telescope to see it? So this is, again, part of the irony, right? Because the eclipse 3 years ago, or whatever it was, 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago, was over the most technically advanced nation on Earth. Okay, and the weather was perfect. And yet we have all these observatories, and none of them could do the experiment. None of them. I mean, I'll say it again. That begs credulity. All right. Ken had too many hyperboloids from the town bakery, and now he's having a mass ejection near his toroidal sphincter. Well, okay, it's a joke. Fine, whatever. Did you seriously skip the part of Piero's video where he told you how to correctly pronounce perturbation? Okay, Piero can't pronounce Michelson correctly. Of Michelson Morley. It's whatever. Okay, so that's what you think is a good physics argument, is pronouncing words, which I'll admit I don't like the pronunciation of a lot of words, so I change them. I'll never say twat, okay, like the English say it. Ever. Okay, on purpose. So yeah, there's lots of words I'm not pronouncing as you would pronounce them. Forget it, because they're way too faggoty. All right, I have big testicles. People with big testicles, not only do they not eat quiche, they don't say words like perturbation, because it's fucking queer. All right, I mean, how are you going to call other people dumbasses? So this is your standard, right? So this is, again, like saying, oh, if you don't comb your hair, you can't be a physicist, right? And we got Einstein as the most famous physicist in all time, never combed his hair, right? So, I mean, it's just such bullshit, okay? Anyone who thinks they've defeated somebody's argument because I've shown you made a vocabulary error, therefore I win. I mean, there's got to be a fallacy for that, right? I mean, that's got to be a known fallacy. The fallacy that you defeated an argument by pointing out a misspelling. I mean, just die, okay? You grammar police losers, go somewhere and just fucking die. You pathetic anal turd. All right, when you continue incorrectly pronounce words, which, again, I mean, the English language is being attacked in two fronts, right? I mean, I'll concede that people shouldn't be too lazy, okay, because the whole urbanite thing, where they're broken English into unrecognizability, it's so lazy and sloppy. And then you have these high-minded scientists who use words like destructive interference when the energy isn't destroyed. Then they use things, they call it annihilation, and nothing's annihilated. I mean, they call something a wave, but there's no medium. And it doesn't exactly act like a wave because it's spreading in only one direction. And we don't have any waves to do that. Or it's not even spreading at all, like a laser beam, which is, well, how's it a wave if it's not spreading? I mean, you're the ones breaking language, you pathetic coward. I will block that. Yeah, I didn't seriously skip any part of Piro's video, but I will go back to it since we have a little extra time, I think. Well, we'll see what's in the spam folder. Yeah, I didn't finish it, but it was a sloppy, stinking pile of puke as a video. It was garbage. So gladly, I'll go make fun of Piro's stupidity some more. There must be pictures from the last eclipse with telescope data that could confirm or disconfirm Einstein's theory about space-time warping. Well, apparently, this is something you sort of do have to have the exposure right to get the star field, right? And all they want is pictures of the corona. And so a lot of the pictures are useless because they're overexposed, right? Is it overexposed or underexposed? Well, regardless, their exposure isn't right to be able to see the stars in the background. Okay, I wanted to add the edit that NASA holds Einstein's theories in high enough regard. Says you. They don't use Einstein for anything in particular. Okay, they hold the inverse square law in high regard. And so you could argue they hold Newton in high regard for figuring it out. That they probably don't think they require further testing. I'm just saying, whether they think it or not, the facts are right in front of them. That the experiment hasn't been well documented. It hasn't been thoroughly done, completely done as well as it can be, with the best technology in the most, complete manner. And obviously, I would argue the most complete manner is to just videotape a sun, because it's going to move a lot very quickly, and you can just videotape it and see it. You can watch it actually go backwards and then forwards. They can videotape it, for fuck's sake. And so you're saying, oh, that wouldn't be helpful. To have a videotape of Einstein's proof of a sun being lensed. Light being lensed. To have a nice, clean, perfect, complete proof. That wouldn't be worth doing. NASA scientists are too stupid to figure out that might be an experiment worth doing. No, I'm going to argue it was an experiment worth doing, and anyone who did it at NASA said, hey, it didn't work. Fuck that. We're not gonna say anything. It's only answer, because it's just too simple an experiment. I mean, compared to 100 years ago, we have so much technology. It was a demanding experiment 100 years ago. It's nothing now. 120 years later. Well, 100 years later. Fuck you people. Alright. So, alright, so I already did this crap. So he posted a link to something. So let's see what this is. ABS. Yeah, sort of crap. Crap. Alright, so another unpublished paper we won't be able to read. Improved determination by Y by VLBI. So again, this is this insanely complicated analysis of radio telescope data. The study revisits estimates of post-Newton relativistic parameter Y reported previously. We use I, improved geophysical and astronomical modeling. So again, it's a model. In the analysis software package, and I2, the higher number of observations, a large part of which come from a relatively small number of VLBA experiments at 8 gigahertz. So small experiments with lots of data. Well, who knows what that could possibly mean. We analyzed more than 7 million group delay measurements by very long baseline interferometry. So again, this is an interferometer. So again, this is, they're assuming photon interference, assuming a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't really happen, to tell us, and look at the data length. So they're taking data from 1979 all the way to 2010. So this is a really long time exposure. The parameter Y was least squares fitted to delays as a global parameter over the entire observation time period. So are you getting all this? This is just so obvious evidence, right? I mean, this is just like a videotape watching the sun bobbing back and forth, right? I mean, it's just like it. Just as good. Yeah, sure it is. The most complete solution to the study yield Y equals 0.9992 plus or minus 12 billions or trillions, whereas it was blah, 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 in the 2009 paper. So they just make up their own precision because they made up their own error, right? There's nothing precise about how you calculate your, the amount of error you might be off by in your experiment. Those are always approximations. You're just taking a guess at how much you're going to be off, and you're trying to cover the worst case scenario to create your margin of error. Margins of error are not scientific explicit calculations. It's just, again, more just complete shit. All right, the item which was recognized as important for geodacity and reference frame realization provides estimates of, so again, this, he says, is the kind of evidence that just should be so fucking compelling. Oh yes, I totally get how that proves it. No, I totally don't get it. This is the same crap where they took the picture of the black hole with this kind of horseshit method. They haven't taken a real photograph of anything with this crap, and there's no proof that this works at all. They haven't taken a picture of a real thing, so you can compare the real photograph to their synthetic photograph and see that they were the same. And you can say, wow, your process works really great because it looks just like this. There's no example like that. They've never proven this shit works. Oh, it's just pathetic. This asshole. I would post such crap. So here he has a whole nother article, probably the same crap. PubMed, wherever that is. PubMed. Measurements of the solar gravitational deflection of radio waves using, so again, these are radio waves, so that they're huge wavelengths, easily scattered. I mean, just all over the place. I mean, they bounce off the atmosphere. They bounce off all kinds of shit. So again, just more horse shit that they've demonstrated that they're outside any effects caused by scatter. No, of course they're not. They send out a zillion tons of this stuff and they get back a minute speck of it back. And the fact is you could confirm any theory with that. because a minute speck goes over here too, and a minute speck goes over here, and a minute speck goes over here, and a minute speck goes over. It goes everywhere. It gets scattered to every single location. So every location could say, look, the light got here in the right amount of speed, so therefore it had to be bent. No, it wasn't bent, it was scattered. And a certain percentage of it was scattered everywhere. So everywhere thinks it took the shortest path. But no, most of the fucking radiation didn't take the shortest path. 99.99999% of the radiation took the longest fucking path. I mean, it's just too fucking stupid that they think this is an experiment where they've demonstrated it can't be scatter. Of course it could be scatter. What an idiot. Alright, so back to the acorn. A fucking idiot. I'm just going to delete that piece of shit. Alright, a single photon, if it was predictable, has the frequency information pre-built into it. I mean, there's absolutely no need. So show me one physical experiment that demonstrates that photons can't be quanta separated by distance. Show me one fucking experiment that demonstrates that photons can't be a ray of bullets at a specific distance. Show me one fucking experiment that demonstrates that's impossible. Alright. A single photon, if it was predictable, has the frequency information pre-built into it. So again, you're just not getting it. The word photon is broken. There's no such thing as a photon, okay, in any kind of logical sense, even for conventional physics. They know it's more complex than one quanta, one photon. They know that. Okay, so this is, you just have to understand that the photon is understood by a mechanism that receives a certain amount of quanta that moves an electron, and that's called a photon. Our eyes can't see a quanta of light. It can't see it. It has to see a bunch of it, 5 or 6 quanta. And we call that a photon. Now if it sees 4 quanta, it's going to say that's a photon too. It's just the frequency by which it's identified, and it has to have a minimum amount of energy, that is, a minimum number of bullets in the ray, for it to be received as an event. So yeah, it's really a broken word, unless you understand that when you're saying photon, you're saying bullet of light. And that you understand that for you to see it, there has to be more than one bullet. Okay. A single photon, if it was predictable, has the frequency information pre-built into it, and it is not magic as David claims. I think part of his claim about conventional physics' theory is perfectly correct. I mean, in a sense, they don't have a very concise description of what carries the frequency information, because their single quanta doesn't. By a simple examination of the light equation, C equals theta v, not theta, lambda, well, the wavelength thing, wavelength times velocity, which doesn't make any sense. So v must be something other than velocity. So again, there's no point in comparing frequency to speed or momentum, okay? It's just not accurate. There's not more energy. There's just more stuff in a amount of space. So yes, of course, there's more quanta per second. If you fire bullets that are really, every half second, there's going to be more in 1 foot of space. okay, than if you fire them some other way, some slower way. And by thinking about what a frequency is, how he, D. Hilster, actually defined it in his photon video, and how you, Gary, define it in several incredibly apt ways in this video, we can see D. Hilster delivered into a rabbit hole of jargon. Yeah, okay, so you're really talking about subtleties. I'm just saying he's correct. It's correct to point out that their theory sucks. His replacement sucks worse. That's the point. But yes, he was being unfair to their argument by saying, by implying a catastrophic error, when we know regular physics doesn't say a photon is a physical little ball, and let's just see how to say that. That by itself has frequency information. They don't say that anywhere. Okay. Euphoric. I don't know what that is. And inflated thinking that could have been instead explained and refined by simpler thinking and explanations, as well as uses of things like Occam's razor. Alright, well anyway. Alright, whatever. More than a singular photon passing by a given point in space per given unit of time, so two or more photons gives a frequency. Well, the point is that all our devices kind of obviously need more than one quanta of light to hit them for them to be able to register the effect. So the electron needs more than one photon to hit it for it to behave in a manner. Okay, so we're back to my trampoline argument. If the thing hits the trampoline and just bounces back, okay, there's only a certain amount of energy possible, and that is the amount of energy that went in, it'll be the amount of energy going back out. But if two things hit in succession before the trampoline can bounce back, then there'll be a deeper penetration and much more energy will be produced. So you have a different effect. That is, you have more energy, more produced. That is, and the energy will be in the form of the movement of the electron. So the electron moves some multiple more when it's hit by two quanta of energy in succession. It moves exponentially more. I don't know, so that's kind of the wrong term. But it moves in a way that makes it completely different, observably different in the effect. So when the electron rebounds, it rebounds by creating a photon, again, some other thing that will do the same thing to an electron, which is make it penetrate deeper into an atom, causing effects in the atom. It's like hitting a glass hard enough to break it. It's a tipping point argument. And so what we call a photon is the thing where the bullets came fast enough on resonance to knock things over. That's when we can detect it. If it doesn't knock it over, that's like gravity. We don't see it. If it knocks it over, we can detect the electric current it creates. It's a long way of saying that we're not detecting photons, we're detecting electric current, electric voltage. Alright, instead explained and defined by simpler thinking and explanations. Alright, we already did that. The frequency information that D. Hilster considers magic is embedded into the singular photon, and not through magic, but by the two above or more photons per given point of space per given time definition. Okay, it's kind of this is difficult to explain, but yes. Knowing that we can say wavelength, i.e. two or more photons, will determine frequency, and therefore the phenomenon is emergent from the math and the known physics rather than magic based on equation we gave for light earlier. I just arguing clearly any notion that frequency equals velocity is just wrong. I know why our momentum is wrong. I know why these people like De Hilster so often go into irrational, misleading tangents. I'm just saying all he's doing is exaggerating. He's exaggerating how flawed their theory is. Okay, he's giving it extra depth of catastrophicness. And look, we're all guilty of it to some. The Bill Geddes guy just made a video pooping on ether, and he made this stupid argument that there can't be an ether unless you give your ether a shape. So unless the entire etherverse is not only finite, it can't be infinite, but it has to be finite, and somehow you have to give it shape. Why do I have to do any of that shit for there to be Jello? I could just say that Jello is it's in a cup, a little Jello cup. Why do I have to? I don't have to give it a shape. It's just horse shit. So I'm just saying he's making an exaggerated argument that somehow ether is catastrophically flawed unless you give it a shape. I mean, it's just stupid. I mean, he's basically saying a kangaroo isn't a kangaroo while a kangaroo is jumping. Yeah, it's still a kangaroo, fuckhead. I think you are onto something, Gary, when you say he has bots on his videos. Well, to me, the evidence is overwhelming. So, I mean, there's no argument here. It doesn't have bots. He physically opens channels and he physically upvotes his videos. So he has like 20 channels he controls, and he adds 20 plus votes. The same number are always there. It's around 20. He adds 20 plus votes, at least. Well, maybe 25. Because most children who are the cause for big chunks of viral science videos, Dr. Quantum and the like, seeing as it spreads through their peers in school, will not find these dissident low sub videos because they are simplistic search terms and generally tend towards overly optimistic and spiced up predictions, definitions for content. I can't believe you people are going through all this work on something that's so obvious. There's just no examples, okay? There's no examples of any videos. Like I said, if it's got more than 10%, if the thumbs up are more than 10%, it's likely juiced. There's just no other way to look at it, okay? It just doesn't happen that way. And like I said, almost especially among subscribers. People who are already subscribed to a channel rarely think to say, oh, I better thumb this video up. Unless they watch it to the end when the guy tells them, like and subscribe and love me and do things for me so I can be famous and wonderful. They have to tell them what to do. But if you don't tell them what to do, the usual subscriber doesn't think about, oh, I got to thumb videos up. They're not thinking like that. It's the new subscriber that does that. Alright, that's also not even mentioning the censorship and the way that the algorithm favors click-through rate, which is ultimately leading YouTube towards more clickbait-based content. Yeah, it's all clickbait, frankly. The friggin' trending videos are such piles of shit that it's just whatever's viral, it's not viral in a good way. It's all bad viral. On the positive side, the algorithm does favor longer content too, so there is hope for future physicists. I don't know how the algorithm does that. And scientists can build or provide commentary on their own channels or channels like yours. I don't see how longer content is favored. However, it could be that his audience, D. Hilster's, is actually a very young and are uneducated in physics crowd because of the way so all this analysis. His audience is a bunch of, they're just refuse. Some of his audience is my audience, unfortunately. Okay, and they're just losers with no life, and they're just watching talking videos because they want somebody to talk to them. Something like that. I mean, some of it's quite pathetic, so it's not a great audience. And you can tell because even the people, like the people of his own organization, don't watch the organization videos. They don't watch the science chat arguments. They don't watch the Holsters videos. They don't care. Totally uninterested, which is hilarious. Cheers to more years on the good roast Gary. Yeah, well, I don't want to do this for more years. I don't want to do. I shouldn't have had to do this for any years. This conversation should have been over so fast if people were rational, because the model I've provided does what their model doesn't do, and it does it so well and so completely that this shouldn't even be an argument. And it's only an argument because humans are belligerent, lying sacks of fucking religious shit. They want the truth to be something, and they're going to try to force the facts to fit it. And that's all that they keep doing. They just keep forcing facts to fit. They keep trying to smash their silly, crappy little round unicorns into square, you're fucked holes. And it just ain't going to work. Ever. And it's why the human race fails. It's why we're unsustainable in so many ways. It's why we have solar panels on roofs instead of on the ground where they're supposed to be. On farms where they're supposed to be. Where you get twice as much energy. That's why we do stupid things. It's because human race is a stupid sack of shit. Dumb fucks. And they won't even admit they're dumb fucks. They can't be honest about anything. Okay. So what was I going to do? Oh, the Piro video. Well, hell with it. Too late. So maybe, if it's going to get a little desperate here, because the rational science guy, Bill Gates, who, although he exaggerates, he makes a lot of good arguments about the holes in conventional physics. The lie. They're basically saying there is an ether, and they just won't say the word. Those kind of arguments, same kind of arguments I'm making, but they're good arguments about how their physics is unfinished, immature, incomplete, self-contradicting. It's broken, and clearly broken. But again, his counter theory is worse. It's so stupid. Ropes. Fuck. It's just so fucking every atom is connected to every other atom. Just can't make any sense. There's more rope than there are atoms in the universe. I mean, that's what it adds up to. He must have a plan to sell rope or something, a rope repair kits or something. I don't know. It's just too fucking silly. But yeah, so he's taken off for a few weeks and doing his whatever, this and that. And so, I got less to, sustain any watchable content. Piro's back to doing his crap, whatever, bullshit, although I am sympathetic to leftist politics. Not that kind of leftist. The delusional, everything will be all right bullshitters. Anyway, so I can't even watch his political videos because he just makes Republicans look good. I don't like that. Anyway, so till the next time. I mean, I guess I'm really saying he just makes Democrats look bad. It makes them look stupid. Makes them look unreasonable and dangerous, even dangerously stupid, and that's a threat to me. And what I see is progress. It's really, sometimes it really just isn't about the evil, it's about your allies. One bad ally can be so much more trouble than 10 bad enemies. So anyway, it's enough. So till the next time, and such.